Hello, good day everyone, and welcome to the class once again. Today we are going to cover the first module of the second exam of HCNP Security. The second exam or the second paper in HCNP Security is CSSN, Constructing Services Security Networks, which means that in this subject or in this exam, we are primarily focusing on the security of the services that are being provided by our IT infrastructure or our IT organization. In other words, we are targeting the security of the applications or the services that are running on the application layer. So we can provide security at the network layer or the transport layer or even the physical layers, physical and data link layers as well. But the primary purpose of today's lecture and this entire subject, in which we have around 8 or 9 modules, the primary purpose or the motive is to discuss and cover the content security or the application security or what we call the services security. So first of all, we are going to take a look at the basic concepts or get an overview of content security or services security or application security. So this course is mainly going to describe the security threats faced by current networks, countermeasures, and especially content security technologies. This module is going to be divided into 4 major portions. The first 3 portions are given here. I'll tell you about the 4th part as well. The first 3 parts are you'll develop a basic understanding of foundational security concepts. Some of it we covered in one of the earlier modules, but we are going to cover some more security concepts here today, which are going to be focusing mainly on application level security. Then we are going to take a look at the typical threats that are present there out in the industry for those applications. And then we are going to take a look at the countermeasures or the security measures that we take to counter those threats. And finally, we are going to look at one very interesting aspect, which I'm going to discuss in just a minute, but we'll discuss that in detail later on. So here are the 4 portions of this module. The first one is basic information security knowledge. Then the second one is content security threats, the threat landscape that we are looking at. Then the security measures that we take to counter those threats. And finally, the IAE Intelligent Awareness Engine, IAE detection engine, which is the heart and soul of content security or service security in Huawei's security products, especially the USC or even other security products. We'll take a look at its architecture, its functionality, and how it provides more efficient and better services as compared to the traditional technologies. So let's first of all take a look at the basic information security concepts. Since we are covering HCNP security and HCNP security is obviously all about security, let's lay the foundation for what security is about. What are the objectives of information security in any organization? In any IT infrastructure or in any IT environment, our purpose is to secure our information. And what are we trying to secure our information from? There are 3 aspects of security that we need to cover, or there are 3 objectives of information security that we need to meet. We need to make sure that our information remains confidential, or we are trying to ensure confidentiality of our information. Then we are trying to ensure the integrity of our information and our IT infrastructure, and the availability of our information and our information technology or information infrastructure. This is the heart and soul, or this is the basic concept of any security policy, so that we can maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or in short, we can call it the CIA of security. We want to make sure that our information remains confidential, its integrity remains intact, and our infrastructure remains available. So what does confidentiality mean? What does integrity mean, and what is the purpose or what is the meaning of availability? We'll discuss that very briefly one by one. The confidentiality means that any information that is present in an IT infrastructure or the IT assets that information cannot be seen, or that information is not disclosed to unauthorized users. That information is only available to users who are authorized to see and use that information. That information should not be seen or used by anyone except the authorized users. And when we talk about confidentiality or any of these measures, we say that that information should not be available to, should not be seen by or used by unauthorized users while it is being stored during storage, while it is transferred from one location to the other during transmission, or while it is being used by any of the users on any of the applications. So there are three important aspects of information lifecycle. Its storage, its transmission, and its usage. Because information is stored somewhere, it has to be secured there. It is going to be transmitted from one location to the other over the network. It has to remain secure while in transit, while it is being transmitted. And then it has to remain secure while it is being used by any user or by any application. So this means confidentiality means that we have to make sure that the information is confidential while it is being stored, while during storage, transmission, and usage. So we have to keep an eye, or any solution or any risk that our information has can be at the point of storage or during transmission or during usage, and we have to cover all these three areas. So confidentiality needs to be maintained at all three stages of information lifecycle. Then comes integrity. Integrity means that the information should remain intact. There should not be information loss, or there should not be any tampering with the information. Nobody should be able to change the information unless they are authorized to do so, or information loss should not happen. So if there is any information that has been changed unlawfully or through unauthorized means or by unauthorized persons, that's an integrity breach, which means the integrity of the information or the correctness of the information or the veracity of the information is not intact. Or if the information has been deleted or destroyed altogether, then once again the integrity of the information has been compromised. So we have to make sure that during information storage, transmission, and usage, the integrity of the information remains intact. Then finally comes availability, which means that the information must remain available to the authorized users. If the information is still there, it's confidential, its confidentiality has not been compromised, its integrity has not been compromised. However, it is not available to the users anymore because either the network has been congested or the server's performance has been degraded because of some attack or anything. This means that the availability has been compromised, or the availability of information is no more there for the users. So we have to, and once again, we have to make sure the availability concept also applies on information during storage, transmission, and during usage. So these are the three cornerstones or three foundational objectives of any information security policy, or overall data and network security revolves around these three concepts, and these three concepts must be applied, must be valid for information while it is stored, transmitted, or used. I am emphasizing these three terms, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, as well as the three states in which the information might be, so that you can memorize and you can remember these terms, because they are going to be used very extensively in any security environment, in any security exams, or any security trainings. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information during storage, transmission, and usage. So these are the three, or you can say 6 concepts that you need to keep in mind while discussing network or information security. So how different types of attacks and how different types of threats compromise these three features or these three objectives, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This table or this matrix gives you an idea of what kind of attack or what kind of risk would compromise which aspect of security in your infrastructure. So if you look at I'll look at just a few of them briefly, because there are a number of them. You can look at them yourself and you'll understand them. So for example, if we look at natural disaster, if there is a natural disaster, there is no risk of confidentiality. Most probably the confidentiality is not at risk. However, the integrity of data is at risk because the data might get deleted, or you might lose data, or in certain cases data might get changed accidentally, because depending upon the nature of the natural disaster. And obviously the most important threat is the availability. In case of natural disaster, availability is your major concern, because availability will be compromised, most probably will be compromised the most. Similarly, if you look at, for example, computer virus, those of you, I'm assuming that most of you, if not all of you, understand the meanings or the nature of different risks that are listed here. If you do not know about any of these, please note it down and Google it, try to understand it so that you know what each risk means. So I'll just mention 2 or 3 risks. For example, a computer virus, because all of you would be aware of what a computer virus is. Computer virus generally targets the integrity and the availability of the resources. Confidentiality is not the target of a computer virus. Computer virus generally is not meant to leak confidential information. It is meant just to destroy the data, to alter the data, or destroy the resources, and to render them useless for genuine users. So this is the purpose of virus. So it is targeting mostly integrity and availability. Similarly, if you look at Trojan horse are kind of viruses, you can say, which look like normal files or look like normal content, but they contain malicious code, or they contain malicious information or malicious content, which can harm your computer or your infrastructure. So the Trojan could be used for breaching the confidentiality of information or the integrity of information, but generally Trojans are not used, simple Trojans are not used to compromise or to harm the availability of information. However, in certain situations, when Trojans, viruses, worms, and backdoors and traps, these are used in combination, which we call a blended attack, then of course multiple areas like confidentiality, integrity, and availability all are compromised at the same time, or all are targeted at the same time, and obviously those attacks are more difficult to handle and more difficult to counter. So these are some of the risks that we face in our IT environments, and these are the objectives, or these are the areas of security which are targeted by these risks or by these attacks. So for example, DOS attack, denial of service attacks, these are purely targeted at availability, so that the service availability is denied to genuine users, and genuine users cannot access either the network resources or the compute resources or the storage resources. So your IT resources are unavailable to genuine users because they are under a DOS or DDoS attack, denial of service or distributed denial of service attack. So if we look at the different information security capabilities, or if we look at the different angles from which we need to cover CIA, through which we need to make sure that confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our data and our information infrastructure remains intact, there are 3 factors which contribute towards the exposure or towards the risk. First of all, the human factors. Secondly, the management factors, and third are the technical factors. Unfortunately, most of our focus is on the technical factors, because we feel that if we build a secure, technically secure environment, our information and our data is going to be secure, and we are going to implement security. However, what is ignored or what is considered less important, but it is very important, those are the management factors and the human factors. What we mean by management and human factors is, looking at management factors first, management factors means that we need to put systems and processes in place which make sure that the security is not compromised for our IT infrastructure, or security is implemented in such a way that our information infrastructure is not compromised. Because if our processes and systems are weak, this means that our security infrastructure or our information security or our information can be targeted through attacks more easily. So just as a basic example, all the major companies or all the large enterprises have a specific information security policy in place, which means they want to make sure that the management factors are taken care of. So for example, if you have a password policy, that password policy is part of management factor. You implement it using the technical factors, but the policy that the password must be required for accessing the resources, the password length should be such, the password constitution should be lowercase, uppercase, etc., or special characters and numbers. So developing this policy is part of management factors. So you want single factor authentication, you want two-factor or multi-factor authentication. That all depends upon your security policy, and that comes under the management factors, that you implement your systems and processes in such a way that your security, it is difficult to compromise security in your organization or in your environment. So management factors are very important. Similarly, human factors are also very important to understand, because most of the attacks or most of the threats that are out there for our security or for our IT infrastructure, they are caused by either malicious intent of users, human beings, or because of negligence or lack of awareness or security consciousness of the users. So we have to make sure that we take human factors into account as well. So human factors, when combined with management factors, that is processes and systems, if they are correctly implemented, or the users are correctly trained, or users' intent is correctly identified, or users' intent is correctly countered through our technical means, it will be easier for us to secure our infrastructure or our IT infrastructure. So you cannot ignore the human factors and the management factors. These are equally important, if not more important than the technical factors. So it is important to understand all these three factors. They contribute towards a comprehensive security strategy. So when all these three factors are taken into account, then we develop a comprehensive security policy or security framework or security infrastructure, and that security framework is dependent upon these four things, or makes sure that we take care of these four things, and that is PDRR. PDRR stands for protection, detection, response, and recovery. P stands for protection, D is for detection, R is for response, and the second R is for recovery. So we have to make sure that whatever security we implement in our infrastructure, it should be able to protect our infrastructure, it should be able to detect the weaknesses in our infrastructure, or if there is an attack in our infrastructure, it should be able to detect that attack and appropriately respond to that attack. R is for respond. And then once the attack has happened, or if some of the resources have been compromised, or if there is some damage, we should be able to recover from that damage. So any security policy or security framework has to make sure that it covers the protection, detection, response, and risk recovery aspects of our security policy, of our security strategy. So for example, what does protection mean? Protection means that you consider all the risks that can happen in our infrastructure or to our infrastructure, and we make sure that those risks are effectively covered. So for example, if you're putting in a firewall, if you're putting in an IPS or an anti-DDoS device or antivirus in your system, in your infrastructure, that's part of your protection strategy. You're making sure that your infrastructure would be protected. Then detection is when your infrastructure is able to detect the attacks. If an attack is happening, your infrastructure can detect that attack. That's a detection capability of your infrastructure. Not only detect an attack when it is happening, but also your infrastructure should be able to, or your policies should make sure that you have the capability to assess the potential vulnerabilities in your infrastructure. Detection not only means to detect the attack once it's happened, It means detecting vulnerabilities even before an attack happens. So there is a very strong practice in the IT security industry which is called vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, or VAPT. I'm sure you must have heard about VAPT, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So organizations actually pay to consulting companies or to penetration testing companies to come in and assess the security measures they have taken within their infrastructure and try to penetrate their networks and do a vulnerability assessment of their network, and then provide recommendations on how to beef up, how to strengthen their existing security policies or existing security measures. So that's called VAPT, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So that comes under the detection part of this framework, that you should be able to detect vulnerabilities before an attack happens, and if and when an attack happens, you should be able to detect the attack in real time as well. And then obviously once the attack has happened, you should be able to respond to that attack, contain or limit that attack from spreading across your infrastructure, and making sure that the damage is controlled and the damage is minimized because of that attack. But no matter how many measures you take, still some damage can happen. You should be able to recover from that damage as quickly as possible. Because whenever a damage happens to your infrastructure because of a security breach, this means business loss for you, this means reputation loss for you, this means revenue, profit, and actually dollar value loss for your business. So you should be able to recover from that as quickly as possible. So for example, now that we are on it, I won't name any organization. You might have heard about earlier this month about two very important vulnerabilities that were detected in the hardwares of different hardware vendors, chipset vendors, called Spectre and Meltdown. I don't know if you've heard about those or not, but Spectre and Meltdown were the three major vulnerabilities. Two of them were categorized as Spectre and one as Meltdown. Those were discovered in the three largest chipset manufacturers in the world. I won't take any names, but they were discovered, and it's a major reputation loss for those organizations in the industry, and they're still trying their best to recover from that loss because of the vulnerabilities that were discovered by experts in their chipset and the way they function. And today there was a major statement from a very major, one of probably the most important personalities in the IT industry, the founder of Linux, Linus Torvald. He said that the measures that have been taken so far are not comprehensive and insufficient to address those vulnerabilities. So it's a major discussion in the security industry these days that those vulnerabilities have been discovered, and those chipset vendors have not been able to cover those vulnerabilities so far.